Hello and welcome to Story Explorers, a virtual story time. My name is Shani Womack and I'll be your storyteller for today. Today I have another story for you. You guessed it, it's an Anancy story. It's called Anancy and Common Sense. Do you remember anything about Anancy? Do you remember who he is? He's a spider. And not only is he a spider, but he has magical powers. He can transform himself from a spider into a man and then back into a spider again. So he was the original Spider-Man. Now these stories that I'm sharing with you are told from the Jamaican perspective. But these Anansi stories go back way further than Jamaica. They're actually from West Africa, from the place called Ghana, the country of Ghana in West Africa. And the Africans who were brought to the Caribbean and to America during the slave trade couldn't bring anything with them except for their memories and their stories. And they brought the Anansi stories with them. Now, if you remember anything about Anansi, you remember I said he was a trickster and that he was always hatching some fantastic plan and trying to make a name for himself, trying to become great. He wanted to take credit for all the things that are, whether they're good or bad. He wanted the credit for those things. So this is a story about another one of Anansi's crazy plans. It's called Anancy and Common Sense. Before we go into the story, we're going to sing again. You remember the song? Story time, right? I'm going to say story, you'll say story time. Then I am ready for story time. We'll say it together. Here we go. Story, story time. Story, story time. Story, story time. Story, story time. I am ready for 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 story time. Yay! Great job. Now, here's the story, Anansi and Common Sense. One day, Anansi was minding his own business, going about his day, doing what he normally did. Anansi loved to collect things. You see, he would go around his neighborhood, he would collect oranges and mangoes, he'd collect eggs and bananas, but his favorite thing to collect was Sunday dinner from him neighbors. Anansi would go door to door, visiting with each neighbor, spending a little time chatting, and of course he would make sure to time his visit with dinner when dinner was going to be served. And so he'd have a little to eat here and a little to eat there, and before you know it, he went home with a big, round, full belly. Anansi thought, I've got a talent for collecting things. Maybe I can use this talent, this love of collecting all manner of things, to help to make me great, to help let the world know who I am. You see, Anansi wanted to be rich and famous. So Anansi began to think and he hatched up a plan. He said, what if I traveled all around the whole world and I collected up all the wisdom, all of the knowledge, all of the good advice, all of the common sense? Then if anybody wanted to know how to make a good decision and a good choice, they would have to come and see me, and I would make them pay dearly. Anansi thought that was one good plan. So he set out to travel all around the world. Anansi went everywhere. He went to cities. He went to small towns. He went out into the country. He went to the valleys. He went to the top of mountains. He went to universities and to business offices and to schoolhouses. He talked to children and he talked to grown-ups and he talked to the elders in every community. And everywhere he went, he collected up all of the wisdom, all of the knowledge, all of the good advice, all of the common sense that he could find. Anancy was so excited with his plan. And he stopped at the grocery store and he got a brown paper bag. And he began to stuff in all of the things he had collected, all of the wisdom, all of the knowledge, all of the good advice. Anancy collected up all of the common sense and all of the understanding and all of the proverbs that he could find. After a while, the bag began to just get so heavy, it began to break apart. Anancy thought, oh, this is no good. He went back to the grocery store and he said, I know, give me one of those new plastic bags. And he began to stuff in all of the wisdom, all of the common sense, all of the good advice, all of the understanding, all of the proverbs, all of the common sense he could find. And he was so excited, he began to walk around with his bag, and everywhere he went, he stuffed more and more common sense into the bag. And then after a while, oh no, the bottom of the bag broke away. Anancy said, this is no good. How am I going to get all of this common sense home? Then, ding, the light bulb came on in his mind. Anancy thought, I know. I'll find one big, everlasting calabash, and I will stuff it with all of the wisdom, all of the knowledge, all of the common sense that I can find. Do you know what a calabash is? Any ideas? A calabash is a gourd. I have a small one here to show you. This calabash is a dried gourd. Someone took the time to draw a beautiful picture on the outside and to color it. So gourds can be used as artwork. They can be used as instruments. Someone put seeds on the inside of this one, so it could be a shaker and make music. Also, gourds can be used to make bowls and all kinds of containers. So Anancy would have found a giant calabash, the biggest one he could find, cut the top off so that he could stuff all the information and all the wisdom that he found in it. So Anancy thought that was a great plan. He found one big, everlasting calabash, and he stuffed all of the wisdom, all of the knowledge, all of the common sense into the calabash, and he took it home. He dragged his calabash home. Now remember, Anancy is a little spider, so the calabash would have been heavy. It was a lot of work. So by the time Anancy got home, he was so tired. He was exhausted. Oh, and he didn't want to do one more thing. He was ready to crawl into bed. But he thought to himself, I've got to hide this calabash with all of the wisdom, because if someone comes and finds it, they will take it from me. And then I won't be able to charge people money for my good advice. So he thought and thought, where can I hide the calabash? He walked around his house. He walked around in his backyard. He looked everywhere. He saw a bush. He said, maybe I could hide the calabash behind the bushes. But then he thought, no. Maybe my neighbor might be looking out the window and they may see me. And once I hide the calabash, they'll run out and grab it and take it from me. No. I got to find a better place. So Anancy walked around. He looked up and down. Finally, he looked up. Way in the back of his yard was a tall coconut tree. Anancy, being a spider, was a good climber. So he said, I know what I'll do. I'll take the calabash, wrap a cord around it, around the neck. I'll tie the calabash to my stomach, and I will climb to the top of the coconut tree and hide the calabash high in the tops of the tree. And then no one will be able to take this wisdom and knowledge. And if people want to make a good decision and a good choice, they will have to come and see me, and I will make them pay dearly for this advice. So Anancy took the calabash. He tied a rope around the calabash. He tied the rope around his neck. He put the calabash on his stomach. He tied the rope around again a couple times to make sure it was secure. Then he began to try and climb the tree. Now imagine a little bitty spider with the calabash tied to his stomach, and he's trying to grab a hold to the tree to climb. It was hard. Anancy could hardly get his arms around the calabash to reach the tree. But he struggled and he struggled, and he finally was able to get his spidery arms around the calabash and around the tree. But it was a struggle to climb, and so it was so hard. It was difficult. He struggled and struggled, but he wasn't making much progress. He was tired. He was already tired from his trip, but he was determined that he had to hide the calabash high in the tops of the tree. So Anancy was tenacious. That means he did not quit. He would not accept defeat. So Anancy, with the calabash tied to his belly, began to try and climb the tree. And slowly, over time, he began to inch his way up higher and higher, and higher. And he thought he was near the top of the tree, and he took a look down, and he was only a few inches off the ground. This is no good. Anancy wanted to quit, but I told you he was tenacious. That means that he would not quit. So he continued to struggle and climb his way up the tree, inch by inch, inch by inch. Anancy made his way closer and closer to the top of the tree. Woo. The sun began to beat down on his head. Oh, he began to sweat. It was hot. His fingers were getting a little slippery, but he was determined. He kept climbing inch by inch, closer and closer to the top of the tree. Just then he heard a voice. It was a wee, small voice. Anancy! Anancy! Anancy looked around. Where was the voice coming from? Then he heard it again. Anancy! Anancy! Anancy looked down, and there at the base of the tree was a small little child, a little girl, maybe 4 years old. Anancy, tired from his journey, tired from trying to climb this tree, he was stern with the little girl. He said, "Go away, child. I don't have time to talk with you now." And Anancy continued to try and climb the tree. He struggled and struggled to make his way to the top. Then he heard the voice again. Anancy, Anancy, go away, child. I don't have time to talk with you now. But Anancy, I just want to help. How can a little child help me, Anancy, the great spider? Anancy, why don't you tie the calabash to your back, and then your arms would be free to climb the tree? Well, Anancy was vexed. He was mad. He was angry that such a little child could come and share this great bit of wisdom with him after he had traveled all across the world, collecting up all of the wisdom, all of the knowledge, all of the good advice, all of the common sense. A mere child would come and share this great bit of wisdom with Anancy. He was so angry. He was so vexed that he threw the calabash down, and it burst into 1,000,000 pieces. And just then, a great mighty wind came along. Whoosh, 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 and it began to pick up all of the wisdom, all of the knowledge, all the good advice, all of the common sense, picked up every bit of it. And the wind spread it all back, all across the world. Everywhere that Anancy had went, the wisdom was flown back to where he had gotten it from. And that is a lesson for us to learn, that everyone has a little bit of knowledge. Everyone has a little bit of common sense. Everyone has a little bit of wisdom to share. People on every continent, in every country, grown-ups and children, young and old, men and women, we all have knowledge to share. We need one another. We have to listen to one another and learn from each other. This is a lesson Anancy taught us when he learned about common sense. Jack Mandora, me not choose none. The end.